Good evening, fans. Tim Kitzrow here, the voice of NBA Jam, and you're listening to the GameDev Breakdown podcast, brought to you by CodeWritePlay.com. Whoa, boom shakalaka!
My mom gave birth in 1985. I was bluer than a Pac-Man ghost, barely alive. In the Cold War, my only blanket was Tetris. I played Rampart with Reagan, rampaged the world for breakfast. The laundromat was my sanctuary, the arcade was my church. I thought I was Rastan, so for evil I
Okay, James Brady, how's it going? Thanks for jumping on a call.
Yeah, all's good, thank you. All's good on my end. Just keeping busy and yeah.
You're in Ireland, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I work out of just a small town here on the border. I've been for 4 years. It's been that point, like 4 years since I've been in a studio. The last studio being Rockstar. But yeah, I've just been freelancing from home since that point, working remotely with different studios.
4 years since Rockstar, you're working on RDR2, is that right?
Yeah. So during the year at Rockstar, it was Red Dead Redemption 2. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's so how much can you say about what you're doing currently, and then we'll kind of work our way back?
Yeah, so at the moment, I'm a senior environment artist with Antimatter Games in the UK remote. Also working with Liquid Development as a freelance artist on an EA Motive project, but I can't unfortunately disclose which one it is.
Sure.
Yeah, outside of that, just kind of taking part of, there's another like education platform called Ricky's. I'm just kind of helping with that and giving like feedback to artists who are trying to get into the industry and kind of just being like a coach per se. Yeah.
That is awesome because you've had a tremendous career so far. I've only had a short time to kind of look you up, but contributed to PUBG, RDR2, Rogue Company, Hitman 2, PokerStars VR, all kinds of things from all sorts of different creators. So, I mean, how far back does that career span total right now?
It's about almost 6.5 years.
Okay. Man.
It's like the first year it was QA, creative assembly on Total War Warhammer. Oh. Then when Rockstar is a junior artist on RDR2, left to go freelance on PUBG. Initially, it was supposed to, we were trying to get me over to Madison to work on site, but there was an opportunity for that. And at the same time, I was like, because I was in England, I was like, yeah, I definitely kind of want to go home to my family now in Ireland. So it kind of just aligned. And I mean, I kind of basically became a freelancer without really preparing to become a freelancer. It was just kind of like, oh, all of a sudden I'm a freelancer. And that kind of took a learning curve. From that point, yeah, I mean, it's just been, I've been working on, 2 or 3 projects at once, really, and that's kind of how I've been managed to sort of digest so many in such a short time span. Usually have 2 to 3 clients on the go at once, which is pretty crazy. But yeah.
So you started in Ireland, went to England, came back. Is that the trajectory?
Yeah, basically self-taught. Taught myself for a bunch of years here. Was applying for jobs in studios as an artist, but I wasn't able to get it because it just wasn't at that quality bar yet. So I was like, okay, well, what else can I shoot for? And then I seen Creative Assembly were looking for a QA, and I was like, you know what? I might as well try, And at the same time, I was playing Alien Isolation, so I was just like, man, I really want to work for Creative Assembly. And then kind of thankfully that aligned when I went over and joined the Warhammer team. And during that year, when I would finish at the studio, I'd go home and just practice on my portfolio and practice learning all techniques and tools, and then just kind of getting feedback from their art department, and kind of getting their thoughts. And that kind of helped me quickly accelerate from a point of not understanding to being able to then join Rockstar as a junior artist. Yeah.
That's very cool. QA is interesting in that way because, I mean, obviously you have your lifer career QA folks who obviously are basically the backbone of the industry. We couldn't do what we do without them.
Yeah.
More commonly, you hear when people leave QA, it's so they can come in, learn, coding standards, things like that, and work their way into programming, basically. I've not heard a lot of people go from QA to art. I mean, but it sounds like you kind of networked and got feedback on your stuff. I mean, was that a big help in making that switch, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, initially, because I really kind of got myself embedded with the art team at Creative Assembly, and I know they were trying to kind of like get me in as like an associate artist, but that role wasn't available at the end of the project. And I think I just literally was looking online. I was like, you know what, I'm going to see kind of what else is floating around in junior art level. And then I seen Rockstar were hiring, and I mean, I applied, but in my own mind, I was like, no way am I even like going to get that job. And then I was so shocked when I got an email for an interview. I was like, what? You know, and then going up to like the studio and meeting the guys and, you know, being there. And then, you know, like I've heard so many other people getting art tests, and I thankfully never had to take an art test. So I just literally had the first interview, went home. It was like about a month later, then I just got the offer, and I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is real. Wrapped up my notice with Creative Assembly, literally finished on the Friday and moved to another city on the Saturday to start Rockstar on the Monday. And it was just insane.
Yeah. Did you go to school for anything related before you got started this way?
Yeah, so the thing is, like, I grew up in a very small town. Well, funny enough, the same town I reside in now in Ireland, where it's not really an industry here. So people, like, if you tell people you want to make video games, they kind of just have the attitude of, you know, go get a real job. It's like, it's just a phase. Yeah. So there wasn't really that support during school. I did a year in a college here. It was like a game development course, but it was like 10% of it was game development related, and the rest was just bulk of like multimedia subjects. So really and truly, I was just completely self-taught, you know. And I think like at the same time, it's for me to come back. It's like I kind of hope to inspire other people here that want to do this, you know, or kind of be like the example of like the guy in the little town working on these huge AAA projects remotely, you know. So that's kind of, yeah, that's really kind of been what I'm doing now on that part.
It sounds like you've kind of worked for anybody anywhere close to you that, you know, does the kind of work you want to do, which is good. I mean, it's got to be competitive, you know.
To be honest with you, I don't really know how I've managed to score so many opportunities. I mean, I definitely consider myself very lucky because, I mean, there's way better talent out there, but I don't know if it's maybe I'm just smart at communicate or like making connections on LinkedIn and networking. I have no idea, but I'm very, very lucky to have been a part of all the projects I've been a part of.
I'm in the US, so I can't complain too much about industry presence, but I'm in the St. Louis area, which really does not have much of an industry presence unless you want to move like half a continent away. So around here, and I'm a software developer, but I've always done everything, you know, independently. So I haven't been in the proper industry in that way. So I mean, around here, yeah, we do all kind of go to school for something related, programming stuff, computer science in general. But everybody spends the day working for like, you know, defense contracting, you know, enterprise rent-a-car has a big presence out here, but it's all like corporate stuff, non-games. Yeah. And then nights and weekends, we all get together in these groups and like, hey, who's doing a game jam this weekend? Who's doing a little project? Lots of little indie teams scurrying around. So I get it. Like, it's kind of a strange thing. You have to really be passionate about it to survive with interest in games around here, and I'm sure in your area too. So not only is it cool that you made it, it's very cool that you're now sort of coaching up the next round of entrance into the industry.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that you touched on like just being passionate about it and perseverance, like there has to be a lot of that to like, let alone get the opportunities, but also just to persevere with the amount, like the workload, and because obviously making games is very hard. So it's like anyone who's not passionate probably won't get into the industry, but then won't survive in the industry because it really just takes that extra push because you're passionate about your craft and what you do. It's very much like that here as well, where like we do have a lot of game jams and stuff in Dublin, you know, but it's primarily like the colleges and stuff here, you know, they teach game development, but it's 90% software. Like there's very little art focus on it. Yeah, so it really is kind of a situation that if that's the area you want to go into, you really have to just kind of teach yourself and network so you get that like crucial feedback from other industry pros.
I mean, side note, but I've been to Dublin. I love your part of the world. I was obsessed when I got there. I got to spend a week there about 10, 11, 12 years ago, something like that. It was just phenomenal. I wish I could have stayed for a long time. Are you bored with it now, or is it still awesome to you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think when I moved away, I definitely missed that. I missed how like saturated and green grass is over here. It's like I mean, I still look at it, I'm like, holy crap, it's so saturated. It's like someone just photoshopped it. But yeah, no, and like, to be honest, I think the hardest thing for me to transition back to was everything here gets done in Irish time per se, where it's like people are more kind of relaxed here. Where when I was in the UK and stuff, and I'm sure you know, as in the US, it's very go go go. Like this has to be done now. But in Ireland, it's like I'll get to it when I get to it, kind of, you know. So it definitely took a while to adapt, but honestly, yeah, I don't think I would change being here for the world, like, because it is just very relaxed. And I think for me, because I work primarily with studios in the US and such, in the UK, where, you know, you can kind of step away from that and then enjoy like the slower pace of life. So you just have that healthy balance, which is really nice.
That was one of the cool things about being there for about a week was, and not really during peak holiday or travel time or anything, but just while people were living, working, kids were going to school, that kind of thing. And in the middle of the week, we were able to go out and, you know, see smaller towns and stuff and see people just kind of getting together for like pick up football games, you know, doing things in the park and stuff. It did seem really, it seemed like a lot healthier culture than places you could be working right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, the weirdest thing for me is because I work primarily with American studios, I've had that North American corporate mentality where it's such a weird thing where I'm living somewhere where life is so relaxed and slow paced, but yet in my own mind, I might as well be living in Chicago or wherever, because it's just you kind of, when you're working with that consistently, you get into that sort of kind of just pace of life, and then it's weird to like have to step back from it and be like, okay, this is not how to do it here.
The people around you must think you've lost control and you're just, you know, why are you doing this to yourself, right?
But yeah, I mean, that was literally it. Like, my family have said to me so many times, and I mean, unfortunately I did end up sick there for a month in hospital because of it, but it was very much like, you got to slow down, you know. And I mean, yeah, I think it took that to realize, like, okay, yeah, you can't do that. Like, it's not healthy. So, but no, yeah, I definitely wouldn't change it for sure.
Yeah, and you do, I mean, being an artist, I don't talk to a lot of freelance artists, so to be on an aggressive schedule with multiple clients and doing, you know, the freelance lifestyle, that's a lot of pressure on a very, very creative job. I mean, as a programmer, I feel like, okay, if I have to juggle 2 or 3 coding projects, it's not fun, but I can do it. But like, to have that kind of pressure on basically pure creativity, I mean, how do you even manage that?
It's a weird thing. I mean, for me, yeah, that's a good question. I think it's really just kind of like, you know, you're definitely creative in what you do, but you kind of have to just take the mentality of like, you're just an implementer rather. So it's like, you know, as an artist, you're always kind of trying to make the things to the best of your ability, but sometimes it just has to be good enough, you know, for you to be able to balance all of that. And I mean, as we know, as gamers and even ourselves, like, if something just reads as it should, we don't really pick the fine details in the game. You know, you kind of just walk past it. You're like, oh, there's a chair or a sofa or a bed, and it looks like it and reads it, and that's all that matters. I think that's the hardest thing. It's just trying to get the balance of hitting those deadlines where you're not kind of fixating too much on the finer details. So it's just, as long as it looks good and the client's like, yep, green light, it's good to go.
I mean, you've worked on a lot of projects for a lot of people. What are you kind of specializing in? What are you kind of known for when people pick you up for stuff?
Yeah, so primarily hard surface art, asset art, like realistic stuff. Wouldn't really be much of a stylized artist. That's like my weakest link. Yeah, a lot of like in-engine work, optimization, like just the finer technical things. I really enjoy kind of sticking my teeth into that. And I think the weirdest thing at the moment is my portfolio really represents primarily hard surface and asset art. But for the last, I'd say, 3 positions, it's really been a broader stroke of like full environment work and character work. But unfortunately, as you know, with everything being under NDA, it's like it doesn't really reflect that. But yeah, I mean, for me, usually when I'm picking up contracts, it's just hard surface art, asset art, realistic or sci-fi. Yeah.
is it dangerous in the art game to kind of branch out and sort of spread yourself out a little thinner when you're talking to a new studio, new client, new studio, anything? Do they kind of go like, well, we were hoping to find somebody who had done like 5 years of strictly X or Y?
Yeah, it is. Honestly, there's so many artists that specialize in those areas that if you're stretching yourself thin, A, you're probably not going to deliver on your best work, and B, it'll hurt your reputation because then people will just assume that that is your best quality bar. Yeah, I mean, I don't think a 3D generalist kind of exists in the games industry. It's very much everyone's very specialized and focused in certain areas. And I think like if a studio requires a certain need, there's always opportunity for that. Like there's always people that they can reach out to, you know? So I think like my advice to anybody would really just be like, you know, find your niche in a specific area and just hone in and obsess over that as much as you can to be the best at that one thing, because long term it will shine and your strongest work will be in your portfolio and it'll go a long way.
Mm-hmm. One of the last artists I spoke to was Luis Alonso, who had contributed to Mass Effect, Need for Speed, like another very impressive portfolio. And he had sort of gradually shifted into the technical side because he had come in doing fairly technical things. And that part seemed interesting to me because I had heard a lot of what you're saying about specialty, but like in our discussion, it seemed that, you know, technical art had become such a wide term in the first place that was also very complicated. You were either pretty broad within technical art or very specialized there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. I do agree. I think it touches on a lot of areas because, I mean, you have technical art for environments, assets, characters, even animation, rigging. Like it is a huge, broad spectrum, you know, but I think in that there probably is people who just specialize in those specific departments, you know, in studios, because as you know now with projects and how big studios are getting, how big projects are getting, like they have the financial budget to kind of get the manpower they require and kind of just get all of those like individual people.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of a funny thing, especially when you mention budget, because it seems like art is even more than coding. Art's hard to get into when you're teaching yourself, like you said, you know, you had mostly done, because you use a lot of expensive tools, a lot of complicated tools, and I'm kind of wondering like what you specialized in on your way in.
Yeah, so I mean, so it's weird because if I if I go way back to the start, I used to use my mom's old laptop and I used to start learning Maya, and I just, for some reason, I couldn't stick with Maya. It was complicated. There was too many, just the UI was just not easy to navigate and learn. So I basically honed in on 3ds Max and utilized that. And that's basically been my go-to since. You know, I use ZBrush for a lot more organic stuff, or if I want to add extra details on the high poly. Primarily it's Substance Painter and Photoshop for texturing, and then Marmoset for baking. Super experienced in Unreal Engine because, I mean, 90% of the projects I worked on have all been Unreal focused. I mean, now as time has went on, I have learned how to use like Blender and then how to use Maya because certain studios and clients require it. Although I still can't model in neither, so I do all my modeling in Max and then import everything and set it all up as a deliverable package then either in Blender or Maya if that's what the client requires. You know.
I would think even as someone who can bring in something from another application into Blender and do it well and make it look really nice, I would think you'd be very popular. I've used Blender probably, even as mostly a coder, I've used Blender more than 15 years now. And I tried way back in like the early 2000s. I think it was the first time 3D Studio Max had put out a version that you could use in like an educational setting, or, you know, if you were a college student or just wanted to learn it for free. I don't think you could export anything, but that was one of the first attempts I made to learn that kind of thing because I like art. I'm not a good like sketchpad artist. I mean, if I handed you paper and pencil, you'd probably blow me away, I'm guessing, right?
No, honestly,
really?
It's so weird. Yeah, like it is the weirdest thing because like my dad does concept art and like he's really good when it comes to traditional stuff, but when it comes to me doing that stuff, no way. It would be like stickman. Like it's just it is the weirdest thing because you would think typically as an artist that you can navigate that, but for me it's been primarily 3D. And then I wonder myself as well, because I don't usually specify or, specialize in stylized work, because I feel like stylized, if you look at the likes of like Blizzard's art style, or like Thieves, it's all very painterly, and I wonder if maybe you do have to have that additional artistic flair to kind of really nail that. Yeah, it's a weird thing. I think because I specialize on realistic art, I kind of use a lot of like reference in real life and real world, photography and materials. So I wonder if it's more just, I see myself more as an implementer of work, if that makes sense, compared to like having more of a general artistic flow. But yeah, that honestly, a lot of people have said that to me, and I'm like, nope, no way I could do concept art or 2D art. Like,
I like that. That's encouraging for me, and probably encouraging for some younger folks also who want to do this kind of work. But like you said, stick figures and little tiny Post-it sketches and stuff. I remember talking to Ash Lyons, who did VFX work on Borderlands. He's still over at Gearbox, and we talked for 45 minutes about very technical applications, all these graphs and grids and very, mathematical things that he does. And I said, this sounds like I could learn how to do it from like a programmer's mindset. Like I could gradually teach myself bits and pieces of this. And he kind of said like, yeah, it's a lot better if you can draw. So I feel like artists go both directions on that. And I mean, good for them. There's nothing more fun than watching, naturally gifted artists come up with what they come up with. But this is extremely encouraging that you say like, anybody can also learn to do this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Like for me, it's, and I mean, in the same token, when it comes to like substance designer, that's all like node based and stuff, that stuff's wizardry to me. Like for me, I'm even like very old school, where I would like, if I was creating a titleable texture, I would sculpt it in ZBrush and bake it down instead of using Substance Designer. So I'm kind of stuck in that weird middle section where I don't feel like I'm super artistic, but I'm also not a wizard mathematically to understand like Substance Designer. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I still have moments where I'm even modeling stuff and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, it's just...
I think that applies to almost everything. I can still go into some pretty advanced coding and stop and look around and go like, I don't know if I even did this right. That kind of never goes away, I don't think.
Yeah, I think so. But I think it's like confidence. I think anytime you start in like a new studio or project, you always have like those first jitters. And then once you get comfortable, you kind of just like, you get familiar with the workflow and pipeline, and then you kind of just are able to hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm. You said your dad's naturally artistic. What does he does concept art. What kind of work does he do?
Yeah, so Dad, he does concept art. He did the World of Warcraft. There was like a lot of like trading card games. He's done a lot of stuff like that, primarily illustrative work. And it was funny for me growing up in school where I would be in art class and they'd be like, oh, your dad's an amazing artist. Like, surely you're able to do this. And it would make me hate the subject so much. And I was like, because I was very much into science at that point, and I was like, when I graduate, I'm going to get a degree and be like working in some science field. And then the lines got blurred, and I'm like, oh, now I work in video games. Yeah.
Was your dad disappointed by this? You're like, yeah, I'm be responsible to get this nice scientific job. I'll be very respectable in the community. And he's like, oh no, you're supposed to do video games.
No, like it was weird because I think like in the early stages where I was like starting to kind of work in my portfolio and kind of wanting to sort of like when I started to realize like this is actually what I want to do, he was always very supportive and very like, you need to spend time in your portfolio and get better. And at that point I was like, oh, I'll do like 15 minutes on something and just like put it away and go play video games. And like, I think as I got older, I realized, yeah, that isn't going to get you to this point. But yeah, he was always just trying to kind of gently push me to like, okay, you need to really like just focus and, and in hindsight, yeah, he was right. Cause like you definitely need to like really give it your all especially if you're self-taught for at least 3 to 4 years to really get yourself to the level, and then as we both know, the industry always evolves. So you just always have to keep familiarized with yourself with like workflows, even like, I mean, we only switched to PBR materials in 2015 from classic material shaders. So it's just trying, to keep all that in your mind and kind of understand things. And I mean, I can definitely see how that can be very overwhelming for new artist talent trying to get into the industry, because there's so much to learn and you have to familiarize yourself with so much as well. And it's just, But I always say to people, like, it just comes in time. You know, if you can learn one modeling package and learn one texture package, you're half the way there. You know, as long as you know the core principles, everything else, you'll just learn it in time with experience.
It seems like the industry is getting to a point where, and it's hard for me to say being sort of on the outside, but it does seem like there's more of an understanding now of what you just said. You know, you either have the core principles, we can fill in the minute stuff we do here at this studio around it. And it seems like they're willing to take more chances on people not as far along that they can bring up the way they want them to do, you know, that studio's style, than to hold out and look for that, you know, 10, 15-year veteran doing exactly every little piece of what they want to see, right?
Yeah, and, you know, there's two sides to that. The first is games are getting bigger. There's more demand of talent needed to get shit done for a project. So, like, studios don't have the time to be very nitpick and kind of find those super experienced people, because the reality is, if you have a guy who has 15 years in the industry and can do that one thing, he probably has multiple offers, and there's all of that competition juggling. It's really like, if you can find someone who's like, look, I can use 3ds Max, I can model stuff, get it to a certain point, but I'm very passionate and keen to learn more. You know, as you said, studios are happy to bring those people in and kind of just train them up. And I think, honestly, like, as I always say to people, as long as you have a basic understanding of the game engine, don't ever stress, because every studio has a different pipeline, different workflow. You might be using a proprietary engine. There might be proprietary tools designed for Max or Maya. But that kind of first 6 months that's going to give you time to learn their workflow, learn their pipelines, learn how to use their tools and scripts. Studios are always accommodating on that, you know, and usually you get a 6-month probation period when you join a studio, and that's to make sure that you can actually get to grips with all of those things and make sure that you're able to understand as a studio what they're doing. And I remember I joined Ghost Story Games in Boston from here, and they were Rational Games made BioShock, and I'd say it took me the first 6 months to really kind of get myself comfortable with even the art direction of the project and kind of understand their workflow. I remember the first few revisions I submitted were just completely way off, and then you're just having that moment of like, oh my god, I'm going to lose this, I can't do this. And then when you look back, you're like, it takes you time to get to that point, you know, and then you can just do it with your eyes closed at that point, really.
Yeah. It reminds me of that joke that goes around on social media every once in a while, where you've got the junior, you know, artist or programmer, whatever you want to say, who goes like, oh no, I messed something up, I'm going to get fired, I won't be able to pay the bills this month, my career's over. And then you've got the senior programmer or artist who does the same thing and laughs and goes, hey, everybody, look at this dumb shit I just did.
Yeah, it's literally like that. I think it is weird, because I think when you're a junior, you're definitely more like very sensitive and conscious to the decisions you're making. But when you get to senior stage, like, I always think it's important to, you know, especially with juniors, remember how you were as a junior and try to support that as a senior. But you're absolutely right in the terms of like, you have enough confidence and knowledge to know at that point how to fix a problem that you can just joke about the problem. You're like, I did this, it broke everything, but it's fine. I'll fix it in like 3 minutes, we're good.
It's nice. It's a nicer way to live, for sure.
Less stressful.
in the corporate game, I try to remember that as well. Like, there will always be, because people kind of catch your eye, like, why is he so, you know, nervous? Why is this person so edgy about this? And you have to remember that they're on eggshells because they're afraid. They're literally afraid. You know, one wrong move and you know, unfortunately in the wrong roles, sometimes it's true that, you know, if something goes wrong, I mean, they may just throw you to the wolves a little bit, but it is a good thing to keep in mind when you're dealing with more junior people, to be encouraging, be understanding, and remind them like, it's going to be okay. One way or the other, everything's going to be all right, you know?
Yeah. And I have a story. I remember when I was at Ghost Story, so whatever way they use Paraforce and source control through Unreal, I did some things that broke a few things where basically certain assets and materials weren't appearing in the engine anymore. So anytime you load up a map, any assets were placed in the world were just disappeared and gone. And the principal artist kind of made me realize this, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm in big trouble. And then I literally just was like, okay, how do I fix this? So I managed to kind of revert it in Perforce and fix it on Real. And then he was like, oh, wow, how'd you do that? And I just played it cool. Like, yeah, I totally know what I did. I have no idea how I fixed it, but it worked.
Yeah. I had one of my first programming jobs. My two teammates they shared one office nearby, and I was out in the cubicles with kind of a bunch of other people from different departments. And I remember very well the first time I was dragging something into the production environment bit by bit, and hearing from down the hall, like, Todd! And I knew right away, like, something had gone wrong. And I'm like, hold on, I'm on it. And I just got bit by bit, put things back until everything was okay again. I'm like, never mind, it's fine. Like, I knew I messed up. It's a funny thing.
I mean, definitely not funny in the moment, but after you're just like, number one, I can't believe I did that, and two, holy crap, I can't believe I fixed it.
Yeah, and if I'm able to break something that easily, maybe it's a bigger problem than just me. Maybe we need to look at
it. Yeah, exactly.
You know, you had kind of a head start on, I guess, pandemic life. You know, things kind of changed. See, I work independently now also, and I told everybody, like, I was uniquely prepared for the pandemic, but then the truth was the changes kind of kicked my ass anyway a little bit, and it was hard to get through, and I'm kind of wondering what your experience was like.
Yeah, so it was so strange when the pandemic struck and COVID kind of became a thing in Ireland. Like, I remember, because I think I was remote for about 2 years at that point, 3 years maybe, and I just remember hearing about all these studios adapting to remote work. And I mean, initially I was like, this is great. Like, it's going to open so many more doors. Studios are going to be more keen to hire freelancers. They're not going to be as kind of paranoid when it comes to people leaking information and such. And then the other side of it was, like, I've not had really any exposure to the COVID-19 pandemic. So for me, it was, you know, I'd be working at home. So you have your own little kind of safe comfort bubble where you don't have to really worry about the pandemic, and you're kind of like excited about the new normal, because you're like, it's going to just change things for the better, you know. I mean, as you know yourself, working at home, it's more relaxing than being in a studio office. Yeah. But then the other flip side of that, it's like, I go into a store, I go on public transport, and I'm wearing a mask, and I'm like, holy crap, this is real.
Yeah. That is a strange effect. Like, when you do have to go out, I feel like it hits us a little harder than it might hit other people, because it's like, you know, in your mind, you think like the real world is still out there. Everything's relatively normal. It's really not. It's a lot different, and it's an adjustment.
Exactly. I remember the first time going to the store and just being like, okay, this is insane.
Yeah.
Wear my mask, seeing like the meter gap signs and just, you know, social distancing. I was just like, wow, this is nothing compared to watching like a news report on YouTube.
Yeah. Since things have, you know, we're certainly not out of the woods, but as things have started to kind of open back up, the first couple of times I was able to go back into like the post office or just very mundane things and look around and, you know, just see other people. It's like, okay, this is good. It feels like the world's at least out there again, you know? So
definitely. And I feel like for me, I think the hardest thing I've noticed about it is, like, you know, there definitely is a lot more people around, but people seem to be just a bit more wary or hesitant about being in larger areas or even just socializing, which is kind of a part of it is just like, yeah, okay, I think we're a little bit further from getting to that point, you know, but I hope soon we'll be back to normal and everything will be good.
I look forward to it. I think I have a new appreciation for, you know, a small amount of socialization and, you know, a small amount of all the things we joked about hating, you know, 5 years ago. I feel like a lot of us probably have a new appreciation for like, okay, fine. You talk to a stranger for a minute, everything's fine. You know, whereas we used to go like, I wish I could not just be at home. I'd work in a closet all day if I could, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I definitely agree with that. I think like even like that little bit of interaction just helps to perk you up, because I find like when you're working remote, it's great working from home, it's great being in your own comfort, but it's also very isolating. So then when you're leaving and kind of having to deal with the pandemic, it can not be as isolating, but it still feels very kind of just foreign, you know? So when you have that interaction, it brings everything home and makes you feel like, okay, everything's good.
Yeah. So yeah, here's hoping things continue to sort of normalize in upcoming months. But I like this coaching stuff that you've discussed for, sort of the next people coming in. And I'm kind of wondering, I mean, tell me how it's going. Tell me what the people you talk to are worried about these days. Like, how does the industry look to them? How's it going?
It's going pretty good. It's primarily just through the rookies Discord. I'm negotiating with them at the moment to kind of do a bit more than that. But it's just answering questions. They would have like questions regarding like 3D modeling or just technical, or hey, is this like an appropriate price count for this model, or like how do I do LODs, or just really general stuff. And for the most part, it's trying to be encouraging to them, because I think at this point I can see that a younger talent they do feel very overwhelmed, because not only creating good art requires technical knowledge because it has to run as well as it looks pretty, but the amount of software and the amount of procedural software these days between Houdini and Substance Designer, there's so much they have to digest, and they can feel overwhelmed because they're like, okay, how am I supposed to like squeeze all of this into 4 years? And you have to remind them like, okay, step back, learn one package, learn another package, and then you can translate that knowledge if you need to for whatever studio may be using a different application. Like I think that's honestly the hardest thing I've noticed about it all. It's just students feeling very overwhelmed and feeling like they have to do character art, environment art, asset art, and it's like, no, step back. You need to just specialize, because there is plenty of talent to do characters if you're niche, and kind of specialization is environment art. I suppose the other side of it is just trying to remind them that they really need to think of quality versus quantity when it comes to their portfolio. Like 2 or 3 really good props or environments will sell them compared to 5 that aren't so good. And just to really specialize in their portfolio, so not have like characters or sketches in a portfolio that's for like weapon work. So if they're applying for like a hard surface artist position, art directors don't want to see sketches. They don't want to see character art sculpts, because it's not related. So it's really just I always say to people, whenever you're applying for jobs, if you have studios that you're passionate about and games that you're passionate about that they work on, hone your portfolio towards those projects and to that art style. If you're specializing in like World of Warcraft art style with Blizzard, but you're applying to Naughty Dog, you're probably not going to get it.
Yeah, that's one of the most common themes for advice that I've heard doing this podcast, especially from AAA level folks like yourself. They tell me, like, if you're on your way in and you are new to the industry, be very specific. Get very good at a specific thing instead of trying to go like, well, what if I go in and they're also interviewing for something else that maybe I could get instead? Like, that's not the best mindset to be in. And no. It makes sense. I understand the instinct to think that. It makes sense. But I think it's probably one of the most important things that people can go in and avoid that mistake to go in. I've heard this in audio design, like don't come in for, sound effects role and tell about the audio, like the music composition that you love doing, because they're actually worried that if they bring you in, you're going to be trying to move right away, is one of the big concerns I hear. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I suppose in hindsight, when I look back, I think if you're starting as QA, but your ambition is to move to another department, it's probably best to really not kind of have that on the forefront, because departments will see that and they'll be like, okay, this guy's not wanting to climb within QA. It's very much like if you go into it, when you kind of know, okay, I need to go this direction instead of this direction, just keep it kind of to yourself that you want to progress as an artist, and just befriend the art team and pick their brains, and just, over lunch or water cooler conversation. And, if you have them on Facebook, post your art on Facebook, definitely make yourself visible, but it's, I think towards hiring managers and stuff, it's probably best not to be 100% honest.
And I mean, I think that it's fair, especially if you go in with the mindset, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having ambitions to move once you get in. As long as you're willing to come in and be the best damn whatever they hire you for until, it's time to move over to that point, because you don't do anyone any favors if said Naughty Dog brings you in and has to fire you for being the worst damn QA person they've ever hired, and who didn't stop talking about art for 1 second, that kind of thing.
Well, that's it. It stands by you because, if once you move into that art role, like that studio that hires you are going to need a reference from like Naughty Dog, for example. So if you can keep in good terms, then you get that good reference, and it just long term it benefits you because then you have the rapport, and you don't know, maybe you start as QA as Naughty Dog and then you get to a senior art level at a different studio and you're like, oh, I would love to go back and work at Naughty Dog. Then the doors are still open. You haven't burnt any bridges.
I feel like everybody has some other ambition, even if it's further up the same path. I mean, I've heard not a lot of people get hired strictly for design right away, things like that. They tend to come from other areas. And even if you come in as a junior programmer and want to be, managing production in the future, I mean, it's all movement. So if you're willing to come in and work and be career focused, like I feel like I get to speak on that because I've had a long corporate career at this point. Like if you're willing to come in and take the steps and do the work and be a team player, you have to hone those career skills just like you do your technical skills anyway. Like, I think that's fair. If you're coming in to play on the team, that's going to go a long way as well, wouldn't you say?
100%. And I think if you have to start as a QA or tester, you really get to taste all the flavors when it comes to game development because you're exposed to every department. You're dealing with issues in every department. So it definitely will help you find your niche and what you gravitate towards. And you just get a full picture, broad stroke of just game development. You get to see kind of how everything kind of just comes together. You get to see it being burst and all of the T-pose and characters, being translated into rigged and animated characters. And just, you get to see all of that happening. So really any exposure to the industry at all is highly valuable experience. There's definitely not a case of, oh, well, if you're not doing art, it's not valuable. No, all of it is extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm. Just for fun, what are some of the kind of games that got you really got you inspired to pursue, the game industry?
Okay, so that's an interesting question. So
it can be broad or specific. It's up to you.
So I think we'll shoot for specifics. So whenever I was a kid, my dad worked at a graphic design place in Belfast, and he used to bring me down, and we would get cookies and orange juice, and then go, and they would have Macintosh machines set up. And I remember they had Marathon from Bungie. That was the first game I ever played. And I mean, it's a weird situation because I started with Marathon, and then we got the first Xbox, and then it was Halo, and then it was Halo 2. And so honestly, Bungie kind of really put me on that trajectory. And I remember I got Halo 2 and it came with the making of DVD, and I remember watching that, and I think I was 15, and it was definitely at that point after watching it, I was like, this is what I want to do, without a doubt. And I remember I used to just watch it over and over and over and just be completely mesmerized by it and just be like, wow, this is how games are made. This is E3. I've never heard of E3 before. So, coming from a small town in Ireland at 15 years of age, being exposed to E3 and all those other things, it was pretty cool. And I think from that point then it was just okay, how do I go from that to getting into it? But no, yeah, definitely Bungie and their games are the reason I'm doing what I'm doing today.
I hear a lot of Bungie. I almost never hear Marathon, so that I'm impressed by that. I didn't even know about Marathon until they did that. If you remember a few years back, they kind of re-released it on, I don't know, Xbox 360 or early Xbox One, something like that. That was the first time I had played it. It's cool. It's a cool game.
Yeah, it is weird because I've heard that a lot as well. And I mean, for someone who's 30, I'm just really? People don't know about Marathon? That's so, that's crazy. But yeah, it was literally, I think there was only floppy disks. There was 10 of them, and you just have to install it. And then there was another game from Bullfrog called Syndicate. That was another game that I used to play. And then there was Prince of Persia, the really old school one. But primarily, I remember it just being Marathon. That was the only game I was glued to. And then, from that then to Halo. And it's funny because I can see a lot of references to Marathon in Halo as well, in some of the signage and other aspects. And I think for the longest while, Bungie was definitely a studio I was wanting to join for sure. But I think because I've been so spoiled being able to work in all these AAA projects from basically the countryside in Ireland, I've kind of it's kind of, instead of the approach being like I need to move to another continent or country to join AAA studio, it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to try and just like utilize this, especially in a post-COVID world, and just, I think like being around family now is definitely much more important. But I feel with COVID, like it's definitely opened those doors where things that were once upon a time, I don't think that's how it's going to be anymore. I don't see talent needing to relocate, and I see a lot more AAA studios starting to slowly open up to having entirely remote candidates. So who knows? Maybe in the next 5 years, whatever, I might join Bungie remotely. I don't know.
Here's hoping. I mean, still seems like a fantastic outfit to, I mean, we know they've gone through many transitions since things kind of really blew up for them, but it still seems like a great team who's really stayed on their feet through the highs and lows. And I'm very impressed by those guys. And I do hope that, hey, I'd love to see added to an upcoming project, but I agree. I've been wanting the industry to shift in this direction for a long time, and there's no reason that everybody can't win if studios are willing to open things up a little bit, bit by bit. I know it's hard to go fully remote, have employees who are never in the office, but I feel like the pros really outweigh the cons. And even people I'm still interviewing are still kind of divided about this, because I talk to a lot of industry folks who it makes them nervous too. Like, hey, okay, let's say I'm at Gearbox and I don't understand how it would work if I had a bunch of teammates who were never here. It's not that they don't want people to be added, but it is a big transition. But, how is it not better for a studio to be able to go, we can work with all the best people in the entire world instead of all the best people in the greater Austin, Texas area? I mean, like, when is that not going to be more of a benefit, right?
And that's it. I mean, as I always say to people, like, with immigration, visas, all that, I think honestly, in a post-COVID world, I don't see families, especially, and people who really have kind of put their feet in the ground and put roots down, wanting to remove all of that and relocate for the sake of an opportunity, because really that kind of outweighs the opportunity. And I mean, that's kind of my personal view on it now, and I think really, like, for me, I think if studios open their doors to remote talent, no matter where they are in the world, it allows them to obtain that talent without having the overheads of having to relocate and ship their whole entire life to a new country. And it allows that talent the opportunity without having to worry about the logistics of that as well. I mean, everyone wins. At the end of the day, if it doesn't work, neither party has lost, because the person who's relocated their entire life doesn't have to think, I have to now transition back, And I think one of the studios that stand out that really adapted to this was Ghost Story, Irrational in Boston. I mean, when I worked with them, they basically shipped me out a machine, and I worked directly through their machine and VPN. And it was almost like I was just at the studio working their time hours, just everything. And it is possible, like, if you're really passionate about the studio and you want to join them, you won't mind adapting your hours to fit their 9 to 5. I mean, that's essentially what I did with Ghost Story. I mean, like, they're 5 hours behind, so I would work from 2 p.m. to like 10 p.m., I believe, in Ireland. And it works, and I think if you're comfortable with remote and you've familiarized yourself with remote working, it becomes a lot easier, because, I mean, I remember going from a studio gig to going freelance, and I'd say for the first 6 months, it doesn't feel real. You have those moments of, like, you don't feel like there's enough security yet. You feel like you can still very lose grasp of it. But I think the longer you do it, then you start to realize, like, no, this is like, it's solidified. This can be such a long-term thing. So I think with that, I'd say in the next 12 to 24 months, I think we'll really have adapted to studios really opening the doors much more. Because I know, for example, Ubisoft are a studio now adapting to remote work, and then I know Respawn Entertainment have hired a few friends in the UK who aren't planning to move to the States. So it makes me very excited for the future of the industry. And I feel like it's just a lot more people are going to win, and there's going to be a lot more opportunity. I mean, I recently worked with Art Bully and Raleigh remotely as an art lead for their Raleigh team, you know, which is insane. Me being in Ireland looking after an art team in Raleigh, I mean, it can be done, you know, and I worked on Road Company and Smite with them. And then I was working with Techland as a freelance artist on Dying Light 2, you know, another AAA project. And then now I've joined Antimatter as a senior environment artist. So I'm basically overseeing junior artists in a studio in England from my home in Ireland. I mean, it definitely can be done. You know, if you really take the right mindset to it and just learn to communicate in an efficient manner online, there's no, like, you might as well be in the studio because you can hit that almost that level of interaction.
I'm super encouraged by it. And, you know, I hope at some point I get to contribute to some cool stuff too. I mean, just when I went indie, I thought like, you know, this just isn't how the industry works. So, I mean, I would just have to do it myself. And the idea that more people will get to contribute to more things, players win, studios win, workers win. Like, it's very exciting to me. And I hope we do catch up because, I mean, my wife works at a hospital. She's already doing this. Just like you described, they shipped her a machine. It came pre-configured. It was pretty much plug and play. I was able to hop on the phone with somebody on her team and fix the last couple of things to get things really smooth. It's great. She covers a night shift from home. And so, I mean, we don't even feel that. Like, it feels like we're just all home together. Work-life balance is better than it's ever been. And, you know, it's not going to be perfect, but I mean, I think we gain so much from figuring that out. So again, I hope we continue to move that direction. And I mean, you know, looking further down the road, I mean, globally, we're really moving toward much more of a, I guess you'd call it like a global community in the first place. I mean, we're so far behind on things like, you know, without getting too political, but like immigration, visas, and programs to, you know, relocate or work with different people. Like, I think we're kind of starting to look beyond all that. I hope we can sort through a lot of those issues and make things easier for so many people. Because, I mean, there's so much to gain, you know?
Definitely. And I think, you know, at the same time, honestly, being remote, I mean, for example, you're in the US, I'm in Ireland, but it makes you realize how small the world is. Like, honestly, I think when you interact online, it doesn't matter how far you are physically. It really just makes everything come together. And I think exactly if we can really kind of just absorb that and avail of it, I mean, we're very blessed to have the technology to do it. So it offers so much opportunity. And as you said, you know, working from home, yes, you can still have like the stress of your workload and such, but it's not near the same level as if you're in a studio or an office, you know. You have your own comfort, you get to just relax more. And, you know, even if it's literally going to the kitchen to get a glass of water, you still get to interact with your family before returning to your workplace. So it's just healthy. Like, it does so much more for your mental well-being and physical well-being for sure.
And somehow you and I have a better connection on this call than when I talk to my friend who lives 45 minutes away. So what a time to be alive, right? It's just really cool. So as we sort of wind things down, I want to make sure you get a chance to relax before it gets too late. Let people know where they can find you online, what you're up to next, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so you can get me on LinkedIn, just James Brady. I think at the end of it is just BradyArt XYZ, and then my website's bradyart.xyz, and BradyArt 3D, I think. I'll send you a link, so I'll have to double check that because I haven't been on my website for a while. And yeah, over email as well, if you have any questions, it's just bradyart3d@gmail.com. Yeah, and I mean, at the moment, I'm just a senior environment artist at Antimatter, working on 83 and IGI Origins, and just freelancing with Liquid on some AAA work, and I believe another AAA studio in the next 2 weeks. I'm just kind of waiting for a green light on that. But yeah, and I'm actively on Discord as well on the Rookies channel. If they ever want to pop on, you know, they can always reach out and ask me any questions they may have. And yeah.
Very cool. I will assemble that all in the show notes, and yeah, follow James, get to absorb his knowledge. I mean, it's rare to get to talk to somebody who's accomplished this much in really such a short time. When you look at the list of things you've done, you've been busy, and I like it. So very cool. Thanks a ton for this. This was a lot of fun, and we'll look forward to seeing what's next from you.
Awesome. Yeah, and thanks so much for the opportunity as well.